everybody, Leopard Heart here again with, what? Another Flash tutorial! What is this? Yeah, I was thinking about discontinuing the Flash tutorial series a while back, but then I decided that since, like, everyone and their mom got Flash this past Christmas, that I would continue my tutorial series and just give a look at some of the basics. So, it's not going to be quite as in-depth as I thought it was going to be, but it should help you, get a start. So what I'm going to do in this one is I'm going to show you some tricks, just a few things on line art, but we're going to focus mainly on coloring. And I figured since I have to do line art anyway, since I've already colored all the other line art I have, oops. Yeah, I would go ahead and show you a few line art tips. Now, what I use is I use the paintbrush tool, which by default gives you thicker lines and it allows pressure sensitivity. It's a lot more like a Photoshop or paint tool side brush. But a lot of people use the pencil tool, which has its advantages and its disadvantages, in my opinion. But, okay, so pencil tool, you draw, and basically it gives you a line, but that line is one length. You can't put pressure sensitivity on it, and it's like, depending on your setting, it's like there's a lot of smoothing. So the default, for some reason, is the straighten setting right here. And okay, so say I want to do that. It starts making more angles rather than curves, and say if I wanted to draw like a circle, it does that, which I guess helps. But what you would want to do probably is go to smooth, which gives you really nice kind of computery lines, or ink, which is even looser, which is slightly more loose than a smooth setting pencil line. But you get, like in a drawing program, you get kind of some bumpy edges, which smooth doesn't normally have that problem depending on how you draw lines. So you can, as you could probably see here, I'm doing things like I'm not stopping right here, I'm not starting like right at where that line meets that line, starting a little bit that way. So the reason I'm doing this is because one of the biggest advantages of the pencil tool is that you can select little bits of line and it won't select all of the black. It'll just select that little bit and you can delete as you wish. And you just gotta make sure you don't delete the wrong line, which is a problem that this has. Again, things aren't perfect, but like some of these like little kind of dot looking things are actually like kind of bigger clusters of lines. So yeah, there you have that. And the thing about pencil tool, another good thing, is that if you zoom out, the lines will stay pretty much the same size. Only when you start like zooming in super big or do they get bigger. But like, so I'm just gonna zoom out, and they seem to get thicker, but in reality they're just staying the same thickness. They just look closer together because it's zoomed out, which is really good, especially if you do a lot of like, very wide zoom outs, because the pencil tool, or the pen tool, or the paintbrush tool, it's called the brush tool in this, oops. Wow, I'm mad. It stays, it doesn't do that, it just gets smaller, as you can see, or it gets bigger, like a lot bigger. So you have to be a little bit more careful with the brush tool. And the brush tool, so let's say I just do that. The brush tool doesn't do the little thing that that does, where you can just delete. It just selects the whole thing. So, your choice, whatever you want. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that because I don't use the pencil tool, oops. So let me just draw this and we can get to coloring. But before I start, I've got to tell you a trick to using the pen tool, the brush tool. Okay, so the default smoothing over here is 50. And, okay, so I've got my whole frame, and so let me just draw some lines in right quick. Okay, so if you happen to do line art pretty fast, it kind of loses quality, and it looks very, 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 very digital here. If you want a more Photoshop-like line, you can zoom in and draw slowly, but it still kind of tapers your lines in really, really strange and unpredictable ways. So what I could do is I go over to the Properties tab, which you can also get under Window, Properties, if you don't have it on your interface here. And you go down to Smoothing. You can change the smoothing to 40. 40, I use 40 because you would think that 0 would work. Like 0 or something close to that would work. But in reality, it kind of gives you gross. It gives you a little bit grosser of a line. As you can see, it's kind of jumpy, which you might like. You might like that. I mean, you know, that happens in Photoshop if you don't do your line fast enough. But if you like that kind of line, then you go ahead and do that. But I usually just go to 40. I don't know, just that difference of 10 seems to really help. So, okay, I'm just going to draw the line art now. See you in a minute.
Haha, surprise. Yeah, there's something I forgot to mention here. What you can do also is change the brush size. So the default brush size is like this really, really tiny one, like the second squarish one. And yeah, it's really tiny and can get weird effects. But you can also use like, you know, really, really thick lines. I use the third one down. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And you can also enable and disable pressure sensitivity if you have a tablet with that. So, with pressure sensitivity, without pressure sensitivity. Okay? Okay, let's get back to drawing. Alright, we got our line art done. We've got our line art on Gear Portal here done, except for here for, oops. Just add that in. Okay, so here you have it, line art. Let's test it. Let's make sure it looks good. Okay, yeah, it looks okay. Map part, sorry. Other stuff in that map I've already finished, but let's go into coloring. This is fun because there's a million different ways you can color in Flash. The way I used to do, and still sometimes do coloring, is I'll take my line art layer, right-click, duplicate it, lock the one on top, and color on the one on the bottom. That way, if you need to like add markings, since this is Portal, let me get my ref up for her, and transfer, I guess. But yeah, in case you need to do markings like that, it's pretty dang helpful, especially for beginners, because, you know, remembering to switch painting modes, which I'll get to next, is a hassle. So, okay. So I've got white, which is her base color, and I'm trying to fill in. I'm just clicking, and it's not filling in. This probably means you have a gap in your line art, and hang on, let me hide my color sketch. As you can see, there is a gap right there where her cheek fur meets her neck. So there are several ways I can deal with this problem. One is to use gap size modifier, or just gap size. And it's usually depicted as a little circle here, next to this little gradient with a lock. Okay, so what you can do is there's 4 different things, as you can see. Don't close gaps, close small gaps, medium gaps, and large gaps. I generally go up from the small, and then if that doesn't work, I go up. Oh, oops. She doesn't have any legs. Okay, problem solved. So that basically just neglects the gap there and makes it work. However, if you keep it set on this all the time, you tend to get like weird things stuck in your line art. Like, especially if you have the larger one, like the ones that close larger gaps. You see, it didn't fill in that because computers are stupid and they don't really know what is an intentional gap and what is not intentional. So, there you have that. So what I'm doing is I'm filling in with the fill bucket. And normally, in painting programs, except for like, MS Paint and other pixel software, that doesn't work. It leaves little fuzzy outlines of the other color, other color or transparent or whatever you have, or whatever have you. But Flash is a little different because I'm not sure if I introduced this to you, but it works with vectors, which most of you probably know what vectors are if you've worked with like Toon Boom or Flash or anything really. Vectors are images that you can shrink. The way I explain it is you can shrink them to the size of a big business card or grow them to the size of a billboard and they won't lose quality. So, because in Photoshop uses pixels and bitmap or whatever it's called. And if you try to enlarge something bigger than the size you drew it at, you have some problems with the image getting pixelated the bigger you make it. So, but what vectors do is it doesn't do that because it's really complicated. It has something to do with math, which is not my strongest subject. But anyway, there you have it. Vectors. So, now I'm adding in the markings, and as you can see, because I have 2 layers, I can draw over the what's it called? The line art. My god, I'm just out of my mind today. It's early, and I've been up really late this weekend, so, actually, it's not that early, oops. So, anyway, so as you can see, it's not going over that, and the good thing about the fill bucket that I forgot to mention is you don't have to do what you sometimes have to do in Photoshop, which is you color over everything and then go back in and erase, which unless you have a tablet stylus with an eraser end, technically, that's a little hard to get completely accurate because for some reason the erasers in Flash don't have pressure sensitivity. What is faucet? Oh, okay. Okay, so I learned something new. The faucet. Basically, it's like a reverse fill bucket, so if you have this, I can just delete all of that color. Of course, I just, like, massively screwed up my line art, so oops. So yeah, that's basically it. Let me just undo that. So, okay, line art is still good. Good. So, okay, so there's that. So let me just fill in there. There's also something else you can do with coloring. If you want to do one layer and not have a bunch of layers running around the place that are probably unnamed because a lot of us are really bad at naming layers. Oops. You can color on one layer, of course. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So let me just do that. And this is where the other way to close gaps comes in. On the second layer, you can always just like draw like that, but then again, if you're doing it on one layer, it does that and cover your line art, which sucks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you painting modes, which are also very similar for the eraser, apparently. I just learned that. Learning as we go. Learning as we go. I'm not a professional here. Brush mode. So here there are 5. Paint normal, which is the default. Paint fills, which if you're using the paintbrush or the paint bucket tool, those are fills. If you're using the pencil tool, that is a line. So, because apparently Adobe doesn't realize that people use the paintbrush tool for line art. Bless. So, there's that. There's paint behind, which just, if you have a bunch of stuff on one layer, it just goes behind everything else. And just, yeah, it does that. So, like, I can just keep going like this. And it will never go over, those lines will never, you know, do crap. So, of course, now I gotta pay the price for doing that. Oops, again. So, anyway, demonstration there. Paint selection, which is good if you like to color line art. So what you can do is you can select the line art or whatever you want colored. And, okay, so I'm just going to use green because that's what I have open now. So it works a lot like lock transparency in Photoshop. But there is no lock transparency option, like, you know, just on a layer. But, okay, so as you can see, I scribbled everywhere, but it only paints inside. So, here we go, scribbledy-do line art. So, just undo that because that's not actually what I wanted. And then finally, paint inside, which is a gift from the heavens, from, I don't know. And what it does is, it also works a lot like paint selection, but you don't have to select. Basically, so if you have good, clean, unbroken line art, you can do stuff like this. So I'm just gonna, like, scribble inside this ear tuft, and it doesn't go outside of that. So if I just do this, okay, so apparently I started outside the line there, but you get the picture. Okay, but that's also good if you're on one layer and you're closing gaps, because you can just do that, and that gap is closed, and you don't have to worry about getting weird fuzzies. And apparently there's another gap in my freaking line art, man, dadgum. Okay, and I forgot to her arm again. Oops, it's still in paint inside. Yeah, if you're doing line art, don't put it on paint inside. That's infuriating. Okay, so yeah, I don't know why it's not working. I probably just failed at that line there. Which happens sometimes with the gap size modifier. Or not the gap size modifier. Oh, I'm getting all my terms mixed up, and I just dropped my stylus. So, okay, wait, I gotta get my ref up. So, yeah, paint inside, that's how I did the coloring on this, because I was too lazy to have, like, 4 million layers running around on a ref. So, yeah, paint inside, it's on paint inside, and I'm just going to do this, do that. Okay, yeah, you gotta be careful of that. Because it's like, whatever color you're on, it paints that within, like, you know, if it's, like, all of the white in her body, not counting her ear tuft, is connected somehow, except for this. And apparently that as well. Gosh! I'm so sorry. I sound like a stupid person whenever I do these stupid tutorials. But yeah. So here we go. Like that. But paint inside is really helpful. Really helpful. Also, you can color line art with it if you so desire. But you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful that you don't, like, accidentally start on the wrong color or the wrong part of the drawing. Otherwise, it'll be finicky, because Flash is finicky sometimes. So, yeah, that's pretty much it on that, on coloring, I guess.